Del Rio, Texas, home of Lake Amistad. Your host, Rob Wade. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive recorded live Saturday, 24 January 2015, episode 129. A little of this, a little of that. Well, welcome once again, everybody, to another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive, and I am your host, Rob Wade. Still going solo because, in fact, we are still looking for a new regular co-host because Scuba Bob has had to bow out on a regular basis. He'll be able to drop in every so often, but as far as a regular participant, he's not able to do it. So if you are in the Del Rio area and you're a diver or want to be a diver, and you have a little bit of free time, would love to invite you to come out and try your hand at co-hosting the show. It's really easy to do because if you've watched the show at all, you can tell that it basically involves sitting here, putting on a pair of headphones, which, you know, if you listen to any music, you're pretty comfortable with headphones already, and just talking. We tend to kind of go a little bit over the map talking about various things. The reason why the show was originally created and called Two Guys Who Dive was because while we wanted to obviously feature scuba diving and scuba diving related topics, we didn't want to limit it to that because Scuba Bob and I, Robert and I, had a number of similar interests that we like to talk about, and some things that were a little, he's a big Apple guy, and I'm a Microsoft guy, although not so much lately, which I'll get into that later. And so we would kind of have a friendly tete-a-tete, a little bit of banter back and forth, both on the show and off the show. And so it just kind of made to keep things lively. So, and then we talk about a number of local events, things like that, because we're both involved in a number of things within the community. So, and we help to raise awareness of what's going on in the Del Rio area in Southwest Texas. And then, sometimes we even talk about national, international stuff, especially if it happens to involve scuba diving. So, again, it's really easy to do. You sit down here and we look over the agenda, the itinerary for the particular show, and certainly as a co-host, you're invited to add content. You can bring something ahead, especially if you've got something that you want to talk about or include, or an aspect, a perspective on a topic that if you know ahead of time and you want to have like some video to show or pictures or whatever, you can just let me know so I can incorporate those into the scenes that we work up as a part of the pre-show, the show prep. So easy to do. Doesn't require any, other than that kind of thing, it doesn't really require any work on your part. Just willingness to sit down and talk and get over any fear you might have of addressing an imaginary audience. I say imaginary in that they're not right here in the studio. Once in a blue moon, we actually have people sitting in and watching, but generally you're just kind of talking, and we talk to each other, and that's why having a co-host makes it kind of fun, is because you can bounce things off of each other, and it keeps things going, and it allows it to not get stale. So again, if you're in the Del Rio area and you'd like to try your hand at it, what we can do is just bring you in and have you sit down at the gear, and we'll just do kind of like a test shot, because I can do the local recording thing, and then you can watch yourself here and listen to how you sounded during the test, and kind of get an idea if it's something you want to have fun with. So really would like to encourage you, if you've ever entertained the idea of becoming a internet personality. You know, it seems so funny. We've got YouTube seems to be awash with people who get their 15 minutes of fame. They even get to interview the President of the United States, which I don't know that was necessarily a good idea. But however, that kind of thing happens. So, what better way than to do something you can actually enjoy talking about? Scuba diving, for example. So, invite you to check that out. Just checking the chat room here. Looks like we got, that might be John. It just says you streamer. Might be John out there. And of course, my lovely wife and producer and now director is in the chat room as well. So that's pretty cool. All right. No movie review this week because we haven't seen anything since last week, where we reviewed Taken 3 and Predestination. There's really nothing out that we haven't already seen that we're interested in. Matter of fact, on the movie list, looks like the next thing coming up is probably either Black Sea or Project Almanac, formerly Welcome to Yesterday. I'm looking forward to each of those movies for different reasons. The Black Sea is going to feature at least some diving, which is going to be pretty cool. And then Project Almanac is another time travel kind of story. So looking forward to those. And those are, at least barring any unforeseen circumstances that the studios go through, those look to be released. Although we're running out of time, those might get pushed to February if we're not careful. And of course, who's going to be going out on the weekend of Super Bowl? Everybody's going to be doing their party thing. Except me. I don't do sports at all, period. Don't like sports. Never did. My dad tried to push me into sports, hated it, and not good at it. So if you don't like something and you're not good at something, you probably should not do that something. And sports is definitely my thing. So, which of course my wife is quite happy about, because that means that she doesn't have to become a football or baseball or basketball widow or whatever. So we kind of don't have those channels show up on our satellite. I love being able to create a curated user guide or TV satellite guide, where a schedule where we don't see anything that we don't want to watch, like sports channels of any way, shape, or form. So it's kind of funny when I work with people out at the base here who, of course, are big sports fans, especially football, and of course everybody was like, "Oh, the Cowboys blew it," blah blah blah. And it's so funny, somebody will stick their head in and say, "Hey, the Cowboys did this, or this sports team that, or something about deflated football." I'm like, I don't follow soccer, or I don't follow tennis, or I don't follow golf, because I just have no clue. I don't really pay attention to any of that stuff. So anyway, having said that I'm sure next weekend is going to be crazy with people getting ready for that, but that may mean that the theaters are a little bit more open to movies. So hopefully one of these two movies that I'm looking forward to are going to be released next weekend. That would be awesome. And let's see, look at the chat room. Oh, my lovely wife said, "I love you." Well, I love her back. She puts up with me doing this kind of stuff. And let's see. Yep, John's on the line. Oh, I've got somebody else streaming that's kind of lurking, but John's in there. Says hi. Yep. All right. Cool. All right. He'll be in and out, but that's okay, John. You just comment where you can, and of course you understand that there's like a delay in what you see versus the interactivity in the chat room. So it's like a 30-second delay or something like that. I kind of look over at the server here so we observe what you see, so I get an idea if things are working okay. So in case things start to die on us, and we won't necessarily see it here because the software doesn't give you an indication, that it just thinks I'm going out, and we don't necessarily know unless we're watching the feed that you all are watching that we're running into any trouble. And so far with the latest version that just got released, the only issue we're still having is the thing that I talked to in previous episodes about the screen capture. But of course I found a workaway around that, and I've been exchanging emails back and forth and sending screenshots and debug code and all this stuff that's way into the weeds, probably deeper than you guys want to follow, to figure out what's going on. I can't be the only person that experiences this, because I'm running this setup on a Windows 8.1 machine with dual monitors, and it should work fine, but who knows why? That they're the programmers, they're the developers. It's their responsibility to figure it out. All righty, let's see. Next up on the agenda. Oh, and tech news, which I'm going to touch on, but I'm going to get a little deeper into it a little later in the show. I let y'all know last week, if you weren't already aware, that Microsoft had a big reveal event was going to have a big reveal event on the 21st. Well, of course, they did have that, and as everybody expected, they were showing off the next tech preview, or what some were calling a consumer preview of Windows 10. I've been testing the first tech preview with its updates on this machine, and I've shared with you that I just don't like the way, I don't like where they're going with the operating system. I love Windows 8.1 because on the desktop side, I can still do all the things that I ever could do with that I could do in Windows 7. I can still do in Windows 8. No difference or changes. I can still cascade tons of windows on there if I want to, which would be silly because you can't manage all that. But then I also could enjoy the full Metro experience. Well, Windows 10 basically just trashes the Metro experience and pukes it all onto the desktop, which to me just destroys it, especially if you're on a tablet. Well, the idea of the new preview was to show off, well, we've heard your comments and your feedback, and we've made some improvements that kind of help out the consumer type people, which I don't consider myself a consumer person. I run an IT shop at Air Force Base, and I use Windows 8 as part of my regular work, and I don't have any issues with it. So anyway, so they had the big reveal. It was for the most part, it received rave reviews because, of course, they were showing everything the way they wanted to see it, the way they wanted to show it, and with everything working correctly. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to make it available to those of you who are in the have signed up for the Insider program, not the developer preview, but the Insider program. And, of course, as soon as they did that, they said that, of course, like 170,000 in the first 24 hours after the event signed up to also be on that. So it means you could download this and install it on your PC. And, of course, they recommended, and I recommended, if you insist on installing it, don't put it on a machine that you actually use every day, because it's still a test. It's still got lots of bugs, still got lots of issues. And if you put it on a machine, your production machine, something that you use in a regular day, it's your daily driver, as they say in the phone world, you're probably letting yourself in for a huge disappointment, B, a lot of problems just getting stuff done, because it's not necessarily fully compatible with everything. So that was supposed to be available this next week. They didn't give a specific date. Well, they surprised everybody by making it available Friday. And so, of course, I had my test machine. It's not part of any production. So I downloaded. That took forever to do, and upgraded my machine, and that took forever. And I'll be sharing with you a little bit later in the podcast a video that I made just showing some of the changes of Windows 10 in the consumer preview and why I don't like it. It's by no means exhaustive, and then comparing the same kind of thing on one of our Windows 8 machines, so you kind of see why I'm not a fan of Windows 10 at all. And then they also showed off a little bit of what Windows 10 will look like on the Windows Phone. They're going to stop calling it Windows Phone. They're going to start calling it just Windows 10 for the phone. So, and I have to admit, there were some things that they showed there that I was like, I'll never use, just like a lot of stuff in Windows Phone 8.1. I never use, like Notification Center. I have no use for that. I've got live tiles. But for the most part, I found it much more acceptable. I won't, unless there's some other horrible thing going on with Windows 10 on the phone. that's doable. I don't see too much of a problem with that, but it's so dramatically horrible on the PC and the tablet that, and you'll see what I mean when I show it to you a little bit later on. Then what caught everybody by surprise was Microsoft revealed a couple of new toys, which really step up the game as far as the Internet of Things and where things are going. They announced that they're digging in a big foray into holographics, and so they have what they call Microsoft HoloLens, and they actually did a live demo of it, and it's pretty cool. Let me bring up the screen region here so you can kind of see. So they showed off the Microsoft HoloLens, and they're really touting this as this is in the near future. This is going to be, I mean, it's going to be available here soon, but where they see this going is becoming your preferred interface of with your computer with data. Let me see if I can call up their page here. Okay, so basically, what this virtual reality, they said it goes way beyond virtual reality, and it was pretty cool. Like I said, they had a camera actually showing live what the person wearing the glasses was interacting with, because all you saw the demonstrator doing was, you saw like what this guy's doing here in the picture. You'd see him kind of pointing and grabbing and pulling and moving, kind of if you've ever seen movies like Minority Report. This is what the person was doing, and then the other camera was showing what the computer was actually projecting through the lens in 3 dimensions. And I got to say, it was very cool, but obviously, you would need a machine with some pretty hefty horsepower to process all this. And I can see where this would be, because I love the Minority Report thing. I like all of the virtual interaction with computers that we see in science fiction. So I'm all over this as a way to go, because I want to divorce myself from a keyboard as much as possible. And I'll explain more about that when I show you the video about the difference between Windows 10 and Windows 8. And so I see this as a big thing, but watching her do some basic manipulation of 3-dimensional virtual objects and building a thing, a gadget, in midair, it was kind of painful to watch because it was so slow to make sure your hands were grabbing things correctly from the perspective that you saw through the glasses. I liken this to the challenges that we've run into working with the Kinect on Xbox One. Now, it is far and away a better Kinect than the one that was used with Xbox 360. But I do find myself frustrated at times just trying to get simple hand gestures to be registered. I'm hoping that in the future there will either be firmware improvements to the Kinect or a whole new version that has even better precision and a better ability to recognize movement properly, because it becomes a frustrating challenge at times, especially if you're sitting down. If you're standing up, it seems to work better, but that means that its depth perception is not very strong. So anyway, this was a big thing and has the potential to really go where they are talking about. I can see it actually changing the way we interact. Is there even a video? I guess there is. Let's see if it's any.
When you think about how you experience technology today, it's like behind this glass screen, and you're kind of stuck. It feels cold. We've unlocked the screen.
Really what we're trying to do is break down the walls between, technology and people.
This is the next generation of computing. This is the next PC.
It's basically a see-through display that you wear, and it lets you see holograms in your world, in your space, all around you.
A hologram is made out of light, which ultimately allowed us to pour digital assets over the real
That was one of
world
the guys who actually
so that humans
demonstrated.
can essentially be entertained and be empowered to do things in brand new ways.
It looks like he went to
The
the
ability
Steve Perry
to
School of
draw
Hairdressing.
with your hand, or to take an asset, you know, an image, and move it or scale it. This is a very natural way of interacting with it.
Here's what you can do with holographic video. Here's what you can do with using your world as a game level. Here's what you can do with taking the power
Now, they did
of,
not
of
demonstrate the
3D
gaming
modeling
aspect,
and
but
creation.
the actual manipulation
And guess
like
what?
this,
Pulling it out of
they
a
actually
screen
demonstrated.
into real 3D, and then sharing what you've created with others.
That was science fiction, and now we're bringing it into science fact.
So anyway, that's where that was going, and it was, I have to say, it was pretty impressive, but it was kind of painful to watch. It wasn't as quick and smooth as they showed in the video there. Now, the other thing that they did, it was they introduced the Surface Hub. Now, this was pretty cool too, and this is like a corporate thing because there is just no way your average person is going to be able to afford this. Now, this is a I think it was 84-inch multi-touch 4K display with basically, if you took the Surface tablet and blew it up into something and overpowered it, this is what you would have, and it was pretty cool. A lot of capabilities. It's got its own camera and microphone built in. Kind of built, basically a Super Connect is in there. Let's see if the video.
We want every meeting to be great, where things just click, where ideas flow and work gets done. The problem is, technology hasn't been designed for the way we want to work together until now.
If you've seen
with
the
Microsoft Surface Hub,
table,
you can
or
unlock
the
the
Pixel
power of the
Perfect
group.
or Perfect Pixel
You can walk up
display,
and share your ideas
this basically
on a
takes the
canvas
technologies
as
of both
big
of
as your
those and brings them
imagination.
into this.
You can touch the data you need to make key decisions on the spot. And anyone can pick up a pen to help drive the conversation. It's a platform that brings the tools you rely on to the
See,
center of the
this
discussion.
adds some of the features
and
that are
lets you
already
interact
available in the
new
Surface
ways.
tablet with its pen.
Whenever you need, you can bring the right person into a critical session. Meetings become more engaging and productive.
So
and
Skype
you can
is
take
built
your
in.
ideas with you when you leave the room.
Skype is going to be more
So make
integrated
every
into
meeting
more
great.
things as they go along.
Introducing Microsoft Surface Hub. Unlock the power of the group.
So again, that was the other surprise. Nobody was expecting either of those things, and I gotta say, for the geek in me, that was cool stuff. Now, like I said, the Surface Hub, that's going to be a corporate tool. There's no way your average person is going to afford that. However, the HoloLens, that is going to be the big deal. That I think, if they can refine it, I think that will be could be a big thing. And it'll be more of a consumer type thing, but we'll see where that goes. So that was pretty cool. So that was some of the neat technology. Let's see. Okay. Let's shift gears into the scuba diving realm. There's a person if you are if you are as much into diving as I am, you may be aware of some of the history of diving, and you probably are aware. Hopefully, you're aware that of Jacques Cousteau's monumental contribution to actual scuba gear. But there is a person who passed away this month. Lotte Hass, her name's Charlotte, but they always call her Lotte Hass, and she was considered pretty much the first lady of diving. She was the first underwater model, and one of the first female underwater photographers. Back in the day, back in the late 40s, early 50s, it was still pretty much a guy's thing. You just didn't typically see a lot of women in diving. She began her diving career in 1949, and she was the only woman on her husband, Hans Hass, crew during the filming of the movie Adventure in the Red Sea. And that's how she learned. That's actually where she learned to use one of the early closed circuit rebreather type systems. She was the first woman to dive with autonomous diving equipment, and she opened up basically she opened up a male-dominated sport or activity to women, because when she got in all the way, doing the whole modeling thing and working on crew, became a photographer. So she really made it. She kind of broke the glass ceiling, as it were, for women in diving. And it's still a heavily male-dominated activity, but these days it's getting closer to equity because, and I'll be honest with you, as an instructor, most of my students have been female. So, and I'm sure there's a number of places that probably make are making the same observation. It seems like women are largely becoming much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not adventurous. Risk-taking isn't really what I'm looking for either, but they're the ones kind of pushing their own limits now more than guys are, I think, generally speaking. And so I think they're willing to push beyond their own boundaries. I know from my wife, that was kind of a challenge for her. She had her own boundaries going in. I mean, you talk about somebody who... just not that long before taking up diving, really was not comfortable even snorkeling. So to go dramatically from something like that to now being an avid scuba diver, that's that willingness to push yourself beyond what you think you can do. And I see that I see that more often in women these days. As far as students, and they will even push past the frustration. They find maybe a particular skill that they're trying to learn as part of the class, most commonly the mask clearing, to be very, very difficult, and they'll get very upset with themselves and frustrated because they don't feel like they can get it. And I know that they can. I absolutely know that they can, and so I try to be as encouraging and supportive as possible, and patient. Because the last thing you want to do is rush yourself or have somebody like an instructor or a boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever, push you to do something that you haven't convinced yourself that you're capable of doing. And so far, I have yet to fail in being able to help students get through that whatever that frustration is. And the ones that seem to be most determined to step in and do that are the women. So, thanks to people like Lotte Hass, really opening kicking the doors open for in this sport for women is awesome. She in the 50s, she actually married married Hans and then she actually got into diving with sharks, which, you talk about pushing past some limitations. It's interesting now, and I've shown you the videos when we were in Belize. Now we don't think anything about it, but back in those days, back in the 50s, when diving was a much less understood activity and still had a lot of dangers. I mean, you think about it this way. You didn't have BCs. You didn't have all the sophisticated equipment. You had very, very basic gear. Anybody who's ever watched episodes of Sea Hunt with Lloyd Bridges, we're talking some uber basic equipment here. You didn't have a gauge that told you how much air was in your tank. You had a valve on your tank that stayed in one position, and then once you found it was difficult to breathe, that was your trigger to reach back and move that lever up or down so that it would release the final amount of air that was stored in the tank, and that basically was the air that you were going to come up to the surface with. You never actually continued your dive on that reserve. So now we've come a long way, and there's so much safety and redundancy built into both the diving equipment and how we teach diving. Back then, everything was much less certain. So you really were pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope of things by diving. And so diving with sharks back then, again, we knew a lot less about them now than we do now. Just remarkable. And now, my wife and I were diving in Belize and surrounded by sharks, and no big thing. It was like, oh, cool, let's get some good pictures, get some good video. So anyway, Lotte and her husband were married for more than 62 years, and then he died in 2013. They actually did she helped with a autobiography movie, A Girl on the Ocean Floor, in 2011. And I've not seen where that's available anywhere. I'd be kind of interested to see that as a story of her life and what she experienced as a diver, etc. So she passed away on January 14th. Yeah, at age 86. I got a picture. Let me switch to her picture. So there she is. There she is with her husband. Lotte Hass, First Lady of Diving, November 1928 to January 2015. Sad to see. But, she was definitely up there in years, and you talk about leading a very, very full life. That's the way to do it. You get one time around. I don't care what people say. There's a lot of people who think reincarnation is true, but the fact is, you get one shot at this. Doesn't mean you go out and be irresponsible about it. It means you treat each day as a gift and don't hold off to some future time to do something. I find it interesting that a movie made the concept of the bucket list popular. And it's sad that there are people who are waiting till their golden years, the last few years of their life, to go out and do something that they've either kind of wanted to do, thought, oh, it'd be cool to do that, or actually just really had their heart set on doing, but just never got around to it. I got to tell you, my wife and I spent many years not doing the vacation thing, and then we finally decide, you know what, we need to actually do it. And you've got to set yourself a goal to actually do the vacation. And now with the scuba diving, that opens up a whole new avenue of vacationing for us, and it gives us a renewed purpose than just, oh, let's drive to this place or let's fly to that place. Sightseeing is okay. I can do a little bit of that. My wife and I were in the Air Force Tops in Blue performing showcase, and we've seen the world. We've gotten to see all these fantastic places, and they're okay. We got to see them for a time, and moving along. I was glad to be back in the United States, but for me, the diving is the aspect. You go out and you go to a place, I like to spend as much time as I can diving, and then you could still do the sightseeing around there, but I tell you, there's just nothing like going out there and just saying, all right, I'm not waiting till I'm too old to really enjoy this. I'm going to live a full life. And, somebody like Lotte really shows us an example of a life well lived and experiencing it all. I've had students who were up there in age. I think the 66 or 67 was the oldest person I've taught, and he did well. Of course, as an instructor, I had to take certain precautions and be careful, but everything went well, and anybody can do it if you set your mind to it and you don't have any pre-existing physical or medical conditions that would prohibit you from diving. But outside of those constraints, if a doctor signs you off, why not do it? Why not go out and do those things? It doesn't have to be just diving. It can be any number of things, skydiving or skiing or whatever. Go out and do it. Go out and do it. Now, when it comes to diving, if you're going to do something like that, there are, and we teach this and we make this point very, very clear throughout the class, there are some hazards involved. You are putting yourself in an environment that is, it's not a natural environment for human beings. We don't have gills, and so we have equipment that makes up for all the things that life in the ocean has built in, basically. Fish have swim bladders, and that's basically their way to make themselves neutrally buoyant. We have a BC that does that. They have gills to extract oxygen from the water. We carry our oxygen with us in the form of scuba tanks or a rebreather and a regulator that allows us to breathe under pressure. Because you may not be aware, the deeper you go, the more pressure there is on your lungs, and you can't actually expand your lungs to pull air in because of the pressure unless you have something that helps compensate for that, and that's how a regulator works. It takes a pressurized tank and then steps it down to the ambient pressure of wherever you're at, so that when you breathe, it's actually helping your lungs expand. If you ever see those movies where somebody's in a river trying to hide from some group of people trying to assail them, whether it's Indians or natives or whatever, drug runners, and they grab a bamboo reed or something, and then they duck under the water and they just stick the reed out there. Well, guess what? That doesn't work unless you're extremely shallow, because your lungs can't expand against the pressure to draw the air in. So that's why regulator and scuba tank, pressurized air tank, is necessary. But so anyway, if you get into something like this, you got to realize that you never get past the basics. All the things that you'll learn in the class are taught for a reason, like don't exceed your experience and training, keep practicing all the different skills, the regulator recovery and clearing, the mask recovery and clearing, all the assisted buddy breathing, the alternate air source breathing, controlled emergency swimming ascent. All of these things are important for you, not only to learn to pass the course, but also to learn so that you keep them practiced up outside. I try to always encourage, and I do this myself, even though I teach, teaching the classes gives me tons of repetition of things, but just randomly, arbitrarily practice a skill on any given recreational dive you're doing. When, for instance, we're on these dive trips, or I'm diving out at Amistad, I'll pull my primary regulator out and I'll switch to my alternate. Now, this requires me to do a couple of the skills that I teach and that I expect students to practice regularly. And that is, when I have a regulator out of my mouth, I never completely hold my breath. I let the trail of bubbles out so that I know that there is any potential expansion of air in my lungs. It's escaping the way it should, through the mouth, not through the tissues. And then also, when I switch to my alternate, I have to clear it. And I may do just the forceful exhale of air to clear it when I put the alternate regulator in. And when I switch back, I may use the purge. But I keep those skills practiced up. If I routinely, even though the anti-fog that I use is really good, every once in a while, I may not have put it in well, or I maybe rinsed too much of it out. And depending on the temperatures, etc., I may experience fogging. Well, guess what? I get to practice my regulator or my mask clearing, because I will let intentionally some water in the mask so that I can look down and swish it around, and that water actually wipes off the condensation, clearing my vision. And then I clear the water out of the mask, and away I go. So I get to practice those skills. Just any number of skills that you can practice all as you're in the middle of your recreational dive. And certainly you can kind of make it a fun thing that, guess what, at the end of your dive, let's say, while you're doing the safety stop, that's a perfect opportunity to, with your dive buddy, say, hey, let's practice a couple of skills just right here. We got nothing else to do for 3 minutes. We can knock out a regular regulator recovery and clearing, or a mass clearing, or do the alternate air source thing. There's any number of opportunities to do it when you're doing nothing else underwater. So I encourage you to do that. But I'm going to share with you a dive accident story that kind of shows you a combination of things in a buddy situation that that I think are good lessons to learn as divers. So here's the situation. This kid named Danny was doing a dive in around some abandoned oil rigs. It sounds like this might have happened down along the Texas coast, because we've got a lot of oil rigs that have been, the wells are capped out. And so, matter of fact, we've been hoping to get do a trip down there to the Texas Gulf Coast around Port Aransas and South Padre to dive on a wreck as well as some of these oil rigs. The thing is about the oil rigs, they make a great floating reef, and you end up with a lot of big fish and pelagics hanging around there. And a lot of people like to do the spear fishing there because it's legal. So this kid, Danny, I guess he was about 15 or 16, he hadn't been certified that long. And so he was out, but he was out there with his mom diving. His mother was a diver. So they're out there, he's doing some spear fishing. That's not her thing, so she was kind of hanging away so that she wouldn't scare away the fish that he was trying to hunt. So the situation was, let's see. So he's diving around the oil rigs, and he sees I guess it was a grouper. What'd he see? Okay, so they're on the oil rig. The bottom below the rig was 500 feet. So obviously, as a basic open water diver, you're certified for 60 feet. As a basic diver, you go for your advanced, you're certified to 90, and then if you do the deep diving specialty, you're technically trained to handle to go all the way down to the recreational limit, which is only 130 feet. So anyway, now most of these oil rigs are quite a ways out, so you take a boat out there. So they're 50 miles from the shore. That's quite a boat ride. And in this case, they had to ride out early in the morning. It was a 2-hour ride. So visibility was great. He's searching for fish. Danny didn't have a dive computer, but his mom had one. Okay, so that was a first bad choice. You need to have your own computer, or you definitely should be using, obviously you should have your depth gauge and some sort of a timing mechanism, and you should know your tables. You should be following your dive table, so you know I can only go this depth for this far. Now, the beauty about diving on an oil rig is that it's pretty much a go down and stay at the level that you want to stay at and then come back up. Whereas diving on along a shore or out in a coral reef, you may be kind of all over the place as far as the depth is concerned, which impacts the amount of time you can spend underwater. So anyway, so and then you never want to you never want to rely on your buddy's dive computer, because that computer is theirs and it's working their profile, not yours. That computer is actually registering that person's where they're at in the water column. It's not measuring yours. And I guarantee you, unless you're like locked arm in arm, you are not maintaining the same dive profile exactly as your dive buddy. When Tara and I go diving places, more often than not, she's hanging a little shallower than me, so she can actually see where I'm at. So and I'm usually deeper. So it means she's obviously going to be better on her air, but she also is going to be building up nitrogen in her tissues at a slower rate than I typically am. So really, she can spend more time underwater than I am on any given dive because of the way we typically dive as a buddy team. So it would not be smart for me to be diving that kind of profile with her and then referring to her computer to see if I'm still within my recreational limit. So I'm not pushing into a emergency decompression situation. So that was a bad choice right off the bat. Okay. Now and then it gets worse. So his mom's computer recorded depths, and this is things that they found out looking into the accident afterward. Wow, my screen is like going nuts here. That's weird. Wow. What is this? Microsoft Word is going crazy. It's alive. It's alive. Let's see if I can get to this. Wow. This is frustrating. Let's see if I can shrink this down, bring it back up, and it work. Okay. So her computer registered depths that they went to depths below. Was it below? Yeah, more than 200 feet on the first dive. You already have violated your computer at that point. So anyway, and then they went back to the same area on the second dive. So technically, they should not have been diving at all after that first dive because they went below 130 feet, or certainly 140 feet. Let's see, Mom spent her time looking for smaller fish and crustaceans circling the steel supports while Danny hunted. So Danny finds a grouper and he shoots the thing with a spear gun. And so, of course, the barbed head of the spear gun stuck in the fish, and so he tied it off to his BC. Okay, so that was another huge mistake. A grouper is not a small fish. And this is a kid, okay? So now, yes, you're able to compensate for that by using your BCD, your buoyancy compensator. But as we tell people, don't use your BCD as a way to compensate for weight that you're carrying in your hand or strapped to you, because any number of things could happen that cut that loose, and then suddenly you're in a uncontrolled ascent, and you can experience severe barotrauma or aneurysm and die. Okay, so he's got this grouper strapped to his BC. And so he's looking for Mom, heading for her to show off, hey, Mom, look what I got. I got this great big grouper. And then all of a sudden, as he's heading towards Mom, the fish was only stunned. So wherever the spear went through, obviously damage hurt the fish, but it's a big fish. And obviously it wasn't in the head area because it just stunned him. So the fish wakes up and starts flailing around because, it's in pain, and it realizes it's near something that seems threatening, a person. And so it's flailing. And so it yanks him around because the thing is big. It yanks him, jerks him around, and ultimately ends up doing two things. It knocks the regulator out of his mouth and knocks his mask ajar. So he's got a flooded mask and no air to clear it with because the regulator's knocked out. And he's only had a few dives since he got certified. So you can just guess that the kid did not have these skill sets practiced and honed so that he knew exactly what to do, which, of course, as I stress throughout the class when I teach it, is you've got to solve the most important problem first, depending on where you're at. If you're underwater, what do you think the most important thing that you need to be able to do is? Breathe. So no matter what else is going on, the first thing you need to fix is, can I breathe? If you can breathe, you now have time to fix the next most important issue. In his case, it was the mask. I can't see. Well, again, if the regulator is, if you've got your equipment set up properly, you know how to do the regulator recovery and clearing. You get yourself vertical, and then you lean as far as you can to the right so gravity works and your regulators come loose, free from you, and you can reach down, sweep behind you, and grab the hose, grab the regulator, and stick it back in your mouth. And you don't need to be able to see to do any of this. And oh, by the way, if you're wearing your alternate air source, your octopus, where should that be? That should be in the triangle crave between your rib cage and your chin. So if it's anywhere in there, even if you get the regulator knocked out, you should be able to grab your alternate within just a second, and it's right there. Now, we've talked about and shown you one of the things that I really like that I use with my students on the training gear, and Tara and I use in our diving, and that's one of those dive necklaces. And it's basically just a rubber tube that has an opening that the mouth of the regulator, your alternate, can fit into, and it hangs around your neck, so it's right there underneath you. I mean, literally, all you have to do if something happens and you lose your primary, or you have to give your alternate or give your primary, or somebody takes your primary, you don't even have to take it out of the tube, take it out of the necklace. You can just reach down, scoop the thing up, and shove it in your mouth and clear it and start breathing. It takes almost no thought at all to do it, but you've got to practice with everything that you have. So this kid is being jerked around by this fish that's in a panic and getting smacked by it and losing his regulator, losing his mask, or having it knocked off where it's flooded. And he's going into a panic. Well, his mother, finally the fish jerked around enough to where it broke the string loose and headed off into the ocean. So meanwhile, the mother finally noticed what was going on. So because she heard her dive computer beeping saying, "Hey, you've maxed out your bottom time and you're going into mandatory decompression." So she's looking for her son and sees her son in this battle. So she goes down there and then tries to get regulator back in his mouth and mask adjusted, and he's not breathing. So she's headed for the surface again. She should be in emergency decompression. She should be doing the extra long safety stops. She actually shouldn't be in the dive in the first place. But she's going to the surface with her son who's unconscious, and then they tried to resuscitate him. Again, they're 50 miles from shore, so there is no immediate help other than the folks who are on the boat. And her son never regains consciousness. So all of this could have been avoided had they actually followed all the proper safety practices and remembered their training. Now, first of all, they should never have been diving that deep, period. They should never have been diving one on a computer and one not. They really should have been, if he wasn't going to be on a computer, if the son was not going to be on a computer, the mother should have been on tables too. They should have both been using dive tables, so they set the profile and they dive the profile. I don't understand why anybody who was trained would have gone below it's certainly below the recreational limits of 130 feet. But they went, who obviously she's a more experienced diver, even she went below 200. So it's ridiculous. So he's not tracking his own profile. He's sharing off of hers. And then they're not close enough together to help each other if anything happens. They should have been right close to each other. She should have actually stayed behind him so that she's not hazarded by the spear gun, and that she'd be less likely to be a distraction for any fish he's trying to catch. So and then when they inspected Danny's regulator, they found that it was in marginal working condition. So that's another thing that you should be reminded, is to make sure you take care of your equipment. So the kid wasn't experienced, the mother was irresponsible, and they shouldn't have been doing what they were doing in the way that they were doing it. The thing is, when he shot this fish, he didn't make sure it was actually dead. And then he attached it to himself. A fish that's huge, he detached to himself, and then basically opened himself up for this hazard that ultimately was fatal. So it's just tremendously sad that as a result of bad decisions all around, what could have been a safe, very enjoyable, exciting dive ended in tragedy for a family because of two people being irresponsible. So what's the takeaway from what can we take away from something like this? Well, obviously, never ever exceed the recreational limits, period. No matter what your training is, don't exceed the recreational limits. Never exceed your actual training and experience. Stay close to your dive buddy, because if anything goes wrong, they're right there to help you. Become an experienced diver. In other words, dive frequently enough, practicing your skills and emergency drills often enough so that when you want to advance to adding a new aspect to your dive, like in this case, adding spearfishing to it, that in itself is dangerous and brings with it a number of safety protocols that you should be following. If you're hunting fish and you're around sharks, guess what? You might be inviting the attention of the sharks. So there's all sorts of things to be considered. Make sure that all your skills are tight, and then get the proper orientation and training for whatever the new skill you're going to add to that. Photography, make sure that your skills are tight. You don't want to be still wrestling with basic buoyancy control and trying to take pictures, because a number of things are guaranteed to happen. One of which is a frequent issue that you see with new photographers in new divers, is that they exceed their safety limits often, because they'll concentrate on trying to get the image, and so they'll either get too far away from their dive buddy, or they'll go too deep, or they'll come up too fast. Any number of things that are dangerous behaviors, potentially fatal behaviors, because you've now begun to focus all your time on this new thing that you've added to your diving profile. Get your skills tight. Practice them frequently. I cannot stress that enough. Anybody who's a good dive buddy is going to help reinforce that behavior for you. They're going to encourage you, and you should encourage them to, hey, let's practice a couple of skills. Even if you don't do it in open water, although I highly encourage that, because that's the environment you're going to be actually diving in, at least take some time, get some pool time. It's always a good idea to throw the gear on, jump in a pool, and just kind of practice them. Go through them. You can find on the web, you can go through your book or DVD or your online course, if you took it that way. You can always find the list of all the skill sets and get your refresher of, okay, now what skills do I need to practice? You can get those reminders. You can go back through them and then get in the pool or in the lake or the river, whatever, and practice them. That way they're tight. They're more innate to you. I don't think twice about any of the skills that I do, because I do them all the time. Now, yes, granted, as an instructor, that forces me to do them all the time, but it just reinforces my absolute conviction that you cannot get past the basics, and you cannot get past repetition being the heart of making something automatic for you. So a tragedy that could have been avoided, but for some really, really bad choices. Okay, so as we start to wind down, I said I would share with you a video comparing and my thoughts of Windows 10. And like I said, this is by no means an exhaustive description of what's in Windows 10, but it's to show you how dramatically different it is from Windows 8. And even accepting that it's still in a test form, there's, it's still got things that they're refining. It's just the basic concept of how it works that I absolutely hate it. So let me show you that video. All right, everybody, this is my painful tour of the latest Windows 10 technical preview build. As you can see, it's basically all about the desktop, even though they said they were adding many more consumer-focused features. One of the things they added was Cortana, but it's really not a very good Cortana. It's not the actual voice, it's the computer-generated voice. And as you can see, they tried to bring in some of the function similar to the Cortana app on the Windows Phone, and it's okay, but it's really basically lame. You got your settings for the notebook, so you can edit the notebook, reminders, places, settings, and so forth. Oh, and as you can see, if you've got Office 365 installed in there on your machine when you upgraded, it basically wrecks it. So I've been letting this try to repair Office for the last 20 minutes so far. So that's annoying, which means that the OneDrive program is not working correctly. It's, in this case, it says 767 files weren't uploaded, and then you click on more info, and then it gives you a list of all these files that it's having trouble with, and each one says open the document in Office for more info. And then you try to do that, it goes into a loop showing that there's a problem with it can't validate the authentic installation of Office 365. So I've been going through the repair process that it recommended, which is just a joke. Again, not a lot different from Windows 7 or the desktop side of Windows 8. The start button by default brings you to that stupid faux start menu that all the whiners from Windows 7 were insisting on having. The only way you can get it to go into a full screen mode and sort of get the Metro apps to work the way they normally do in Windows 8 is you have to turn on the tablet mode. And let's see if I can even figure out how to get to that. Go settings. So this is what the settings look like. Basically, they're trying to move everything off of the old settings in the control panel. And let's see, where was it? Was it system? Again, it took me a while to figure out where this was. Oh, there we go. So here's some of the settings that in the old settings capability on Windows 8 you could find. So you got this tablet mode, and you've turned that off. Let me turn that off. And so now everything runs, and I don't know what what these garbage things are here. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's just poorly designed. I mean, what's this blue border that only goes part way around? But anyway, so what that means now you can't see the can't even move it now. That's great. So you can't close the window. Lovely. Except if you can right click here and close the window. Lovely. Again, I attribute a lot of these inconsistencies to issues with the it's not a finished build by any stretch. So now without tablet mode, we can click on, well, I guess it's now, let me switch it back. This is the garbage that you get, and this is what all the whiners from Windows 7 actually like, is they like their stupid programs list over here and then merging the quasi live tiles over here. And I'm sorry, this is not acceptable to me. I love the start screen. I live on the start screen. I only put things on the desktop when they have to run there. But I keep my taskbar empty. I hate the taskbar. I have no use for the taskbar other than when there's things that I'm forced to use the taskbar with. I much prefer using the mouse to access everything as if it was my fingers, if I was on a touchscreen. The only reason I should ever touch the keyboard is if I'm actually typing something. I hate using the keyboard for the shortcuts. I should never have to use the shortcuts, but that's about the only way that you can get in.
And I'll pause right here just to refer you back to something I said earlier in tonight's show, as I was talking about the potential of the holographic features of the HoloLens becoming the interface between Cortana actually becoming mature on the entire Windows platform, because it is awesome on the phone. It is absolutely awesome on the phone. You potentially will never have to touch a keyboard because you'll be able to just simply tell it what you want to have happen. Literally, the only typing that you'll end up doing are things that would not be able to be spoken easily or gestured in place. So the keyboard will become more and more irrelevant to interface with the machine. And yet, what they seem to have done with Windows 10 is made the keyboard even more important. And I just find it frustrating. As a tech person, as a person who runs an IT shop, I don't understand the people who say, well, don't you do any work? How can you not use the desktop? I use the desktop when it's necessary. I use the keyboard when it's necessary. But don't put me in a position where I've now started to get used to an interface that's non-keyboard based. Don't force me to go back to something that's more keyboard. So let's continue.
Anything done. So anyway, then you click on your all apps and it's here. So the only thing you can do, you can switch to tablet mode. And let me see if I can bring back up the settings, see if that'll work at all. Where was that? Go back. Settings. See, this is ugly. Display. All right, switch back to tablet mode on. Okay. So this sort of pushes things to run in a regular full screen mode if it's Metro style. You can't apparently... There you go. So you can sort of snap them, but it puts them basically back on the desktop. And then you can resize. In other words, it doesn't do anything with the Metro apps any different than it does with desktop programs, which I have a problem with. I like the way Metro snaps things. And in fact, I can snap the desktop onto a portion of the screen, and I'll show you this when I switch over to one of my Windows 8 devices, and still have my Metro apps up here running cleanly. But you see, this is just horrible design. Let me see if I can get this to close. So you can, in tablet mode, you can actually drag these down again, which you couldn't do with the previous build. Everything had the stupid red X and the title bar on it. Okay, so let me switch back to this. This is what, when tablet mode with full screen, this is what it looks like, the start screen. And you've got these weird, you can't get rid of these. You cannot delete them. There's no right clicking you can do. All you can do is change them. And then there's, of course, there's not intuitive, but you have to, in order to move these, you have to click on the little ellipsis button, and then you can move those. It took me a while to figure that out. You can sort of move these around, and I don't know what that is either, this little dots. I guess it's another unmarked one. I probably can type something in there. Yes. And you can't get rid of them.
I was trying to type and hold my Lumia 1020.
They're there. So basically,
by the way,
with this start screen, it's not even a start screen. It's just a start menu run in full screen, which is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. The only thing you can do is move between two different columns, and then everything has to scroll up. Okay? And then you've got this garbage over on the side. I don't want to see this. I want to see only live tiles, or only tiles. I don't want to see this places category, and you can't do anything with it. You can only pin to start. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm already on the flippin' start screen, and I see these. Why would I want them here and here at the same time? Why? No. So I want to be able to get rid of this and get rid of recently added. I only want and oh, by the way, now when you click on the all apps, again, an endless scroll. No jump list. You can't click on a letter and go to a jump list, nothing. All it does is they've apportioned the left side of the start menu, run in full screen mode, to show you all this garbage, and then you have to click on the little tiny hard to read back button. And then of course, your account information is this tiny little thing up here, and this is where you can do your change account settings and lock and sign out and all that garbage. So this is just unacceptable. This is ridiculous. Let's see, the store beta for Windows 10 is equally disgusting. So
what is this? Okay, scrolling left and right, and oh, now you can scroll up and down if you move over here. Oh, but I moved over here. Now what? Oh, I'm scrolling left and right. Oh, I can't. How do I scroll? What is this? Who was smoking weed? I swear it's made by people from Oregon and Colorado. This makes no sense. None of this design makes any sense whatsoever. It's horrible. It's horrible. And then you have to be very careful when you try to actually exit. Let's see if I get it. Nope. Still working on trying to repair my office. Lovely. Let's see. Okay. Every time I reboot, and sometimes just if it's idle long enough, I lose my Wi-Fi connection. And of course you click on it, it brings you to, now it's connected. Now interestingly, I have to go in here every time and check the connect automatically, and yet it doesn't work. It doesn't actually remember to do that. Let me go back to settings. Here's your personalization. That's all you get. Can't personalize anything else, whereas you should be able to personalize your actual start screen, which you don't have a start screen anymore. You have a start menu that tries to pretend to be a start screen when you're running full screen mode, and it works nothing like the old start screen. And pretty much all the real mouse functionality is gone. The only thing they brought back for this that wasn't in the previous W10 Win 10 builds was when you're in tablet mode, this works. But you can't go over to the side, even though I've got on the taskbar, which shouldn't be showing when I'm in the start screen. You can't turn it off. But if I go in here and look at the properties, there's nothing to turn it off. You can do the auto hide, and then that breaks too. That doesn't even work correctly. But auto hide is not the same thing as not having the taskbar on there at all. I never want to see the taskbar, ever. Let's see, navigation. Well, I've got this checked. I've always had this checked. When I point to the upper right corner, show the charms. Well, there are no charms. Here I am at the upper right corner. Here I am at the upper right corner. Do you see charms? No. And at least in the previous build, you could do the Win C button, the Windows and C button, and that would bring up the charms. But no, as you can see, that brings up nothing. And bringing up the swiping up the upper left should show me any running Metro apps. None of that's there. Everything you do is now forced to be on the desktop and with this taskbar. And oh, by the way, one of the greatest things about Windows 8 that I loved from the beginning was that when you're on your start screen, all you have to do is just start typing. I'm typing. There's nothing happening. Nothing happening. You could just start typing, and I'm going to illustrate this when I switch over to the Windows 8 machine. When you start typing, it automatically begins searching both locally and on the web for whatever you're looking for, and it would show it up on a bar on the right side, and then you could select from the items that showed up and execute it. Now you absolutely have to go to this Windows 95 through Windows 7 search bar. That's the only thing you can find it in. Tweetium, see if it finds that. So right off the bat, it's searching for the web. You have to click on here to search my stuff. Oh, no files found. Really? And yet, how do I even get out of this? Escape? Let me try escape. Yeah, that works. And yet, there's Tweetium, folks. There's Tweetium. It's in my stuff. It's an app on my machine. I run it, and look, there's the stupid taskbar again for Tweetium. And then what is this bar? I move up here to the top, move the mouse to the top, and now I've got this bar that's, again, largely disappearing off the screen. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So I'm going to drag it down and make it go away. All right, so let's go over to the server and show you how that works. I'll wake it up here. All right, so this is our server, our media server, running Windows 8. Now you'll notice all the live tiles are nice and clean there, and they're broken down by groups that you can easily change, name the group. Nice and clean. I can organize them however I want to. If I go down to the bottom and bring the corner down, I can rearrange entire groups, or I can move tiles to a specific group. So easy to do. I can grab this one. If I want to bring it over to this group, I can drop it in. It's so easy to do. And then just click on it, brings it forward. Now, I can go to all apps just by going down here to the down button. Now look at this. Look how nice that is. Easy, much easier to read. You see much better thumbnails of your apps. You can sort easily by name. You see it's starting, and guess what? If I click on this, it goes to a jump list. How cool is that? Just like on Windows Phone. So I've got a jump list. I can go right to M for Microsoft or whatever. And so there I am. I'm right there. I can pick things I want. I can right click. I can unpin from start or pin from start. If it isn't there, I can find it in my start and it will go right to it. So I'll click on find and start. Oh, wow, there it is. So let me go back here. See, it's highlighted. Let's see. I can sort by date installed. Wow, so it's showing me most recent versus things that were older. I can sort by most often used, so you can see the stuff that I use most frequently. And then by category. See books and reference, entertainment. It's so easy. It looks great. It's easy to use, and you can customize and have the background image you want. It looks great. Now, what I was talking about, you could type anything and find it. So let me search for. I'm gonna just start typing. Tweedium. Look at this. And there it is, right off the bat. It shows me, oh, I can install the app because I don't have it on this machine. This is not the regular account that I use. And so everything above this line is things that I can do locally. And then the rest of this is all searches on the web. Let's pull up, and it automatically changes right with it. And see, I didn't have to, it automatically brought up the search bar just because I started typing. So let me type in Skype. So look at that. It shows me on my machine, I have the actual app, I have the Wi-Fi version, I have the link to, I do actually have a link to the website, and then I have some settings that I can use. And then everything below here is searchable on the web. Now, true, I still have a search bar, but I didn't have to go to it. I could just start typing, which is what makes it so easy in Windows 8. Even if you want to keep a very clean start screen, you can put just the stuff you really, really use all the time there. And then everything else can simply reside either elsewhere on your computer or here in your apps and programs. Okay, and this does show you not just apps, modern apps or Metro apps. It also shows you things that are actually installed legacy, like Notepad, Calculator. All the Office stuff is currently still the desktop version. So everything that you have installed, all you have to do is simply begin typing. Anything you want, you simply begin typing, and it automatically brings that up. Not true in Windows 10. Let's see, what were some of the things? Oh, so when you bring up let me bring up music. Okay, so I'm bringing up the music app. All right, and it's going to look at my, which I don't really have. Let me go to Explore. Should have done this on my production machine because I already have a bunch of stuff loaded up. There we go. All right.
So this is the music app. Now, what if I don't care about that. So what if I want to do stuff on the desktop? Let me go back to the start screen, and I will, well, let me just bring up the desktop. So I bring up the desktop. All right, so there's the traditional desktop. It's really no different other than you don't have the old start menu down here, but you can right-click and bring all the major settings that you typically use, programs and features, etc. You can bring all that up, control panel and everything. But everything else works just the same as Windows 7 on the desktop here. So people who were complaining about the functionality of Windows 8 compared to what they could do on Windows 7, they're just full of garbage if they say that you couldn't do what you needed to do. Everything works exactly the same. You can have all the programs that you want on here. See this File Explorer. You can do all that stuff. Now, watch what happens when I go over to the left. Now, it shows me, oh, I have a couple of different things going on here. When I move my cursor down, oh, so now I have a bar that shows me Metro apps. Now, let's say I want to bring up the music app, but I don't want to run it full screen. So I just click and drag it, and look. It immediately shows a separation bar. Now I can drop it in. So, and I can resize this. So now I can still do stuff on a miniaturized version of my desktop. So I can still do legacy things here and still listen to music over here or play with the Metro apps. Let's say I want to switch from that to my little search that I was using. So I can bring the search over there, and it's searching, it's showing my search window adjusted for that. And I still can do all my legacy stuff on the desktop side. Okay, easily adjustable, no issues there. And then if I want to, I can either click on the X, or I just prefer doing this, and it's gone. And then I can snap the whole thing to full screen. Piece of cake. Now, what I was talking about, the charms bar. Okay, I go over here, and I move up to the upper right corner, and now I have my charms. I can go to my settings, go to devices, go right to the start from there. I can share things, or I can search from there as well. Now, what I liked about this is the settings are in Windows 8 are app context specific. So if I go back here, let's say I want to bring up, let me bring up the music app again. Let me also run the what's another one? That'd be a good one. Let me bring up the calendar. Okay. Now, here's the cool thing. Now I'm going to actually bring up the mail app. All right. Now, when I move over here and bring up the charms, or if I press the Windows and C key, and I click on settings, it knows that I want to do the settings for this app. So look, it says settings for mail. I can work on the accounts, set the options, etc. And I still have access to some of the system-wide type configurations. Now, if I switch to the music app, and I go over here and bring up the settings. Wow, settings for the music. Again, all sensitive to that. Now, you might ask, what happens if I bring up both? Well, the center bar here gives you an ellipsis with a vertical bar, if you'll notice. The vertical bar tells you which is your active app. So if I click back over here where it will focus. So if I click over here, notice that bar moved to the right. So it tells me I've got focus over here. So when I bring up settings, it's settings for music. If I switch to here, switch focus over to the mail app and then bring up settings. The settings are for mail. So it's context sensitive. But I know I can always go with my mouse. Notice on all of this, I have not touched my keyboard to do any of this. All of this is doable through the mouse.
And I'll pause right there just to kind of reinforce that. what Windows 10 has done, and I'm sure there's not going to be a lot of improvement in that with the future updates and builds, is that it now kicks you back to doing more things with the keyboard. You have to do Alt Escape or Alt Tab or all these different key combinations to do things that on Windows 8 I can do with just a mouse, which is basically the analog for using your finger on a touch machine. That was the thing that I really liked, and as a matter of fact, all the feedback that I gave Microsoft as we were working through the developer preview and consumer preview and release preview of Windows 8, and then going into 8.1, was I said I want to see more of the mouse gestures able to mimic what my fingers can do. Now, obviously, with the mouse, you've only got one touch point, whereas with a typical touchscreen, you've got 5 to 10 touch points that you can use, which is what allows you to do pinch and zoom. Which, by the way, in case you didn't know, with Windows 8, if you've got either a laptop or a laptop that has a touch pad on it, where you in place of an actual mouse, or you have a keyboard. Matter of fact, let me show you mine. I'll switch to the camera view here real quick. Well, no, I better shouldn't. I'll show you afterward. If you have a keyboard that actually has a touchpad on, I've got a Logitech keyboard that actually has a touchpad on it. You can do all the pinch and zoom stuff. And by using two fingers, you can actually do like touch scrolling and movement of your display. So, all right, let me continue. The only time I ever have to touch the keyboard is if I'm actually typing something, if I'm working on an Excel document or something. So, those are just some examples of comparing Windows 8 to Windows 10 and why I absolutely hate Windows 10. It's just a bad design, bad concept to go backwards to satisfy the people who couldn't get off of the Windows XP, Windows 7 way of doing things. Even though there was no loss of what you could do in Windows 7, or loss of what you could do in Windows 7 moving to Windows 8. So that's my opinion of Windows 10 at this point. That compared to that. It's disgusting. Okay, so you've seen, and again, this is by no means exhaustive, and there are those who are big fans of Windows 10 who will show you all the great things it can do, but you know what? If it can't do the most basic things that I want to do with the machine, and that I actually embraced with Windows 8, you know, I find it funny. People have accused me as like, oh, you just can't accept change. I'm like, you know what? It's everybody else that didn't seem to accept what they called the jarring difference of the whole Metro environment. They were the ones who couldn't accept change. I fully embraced it because I really do love my Windows phone, and it looks and functions in that way. And so I still could do all the legacy stuff that I could do in Windows, that I was able to do prior with Windows 7 and Vista, etc. But I also have the advantage of all the things I can do in the Metro environment, and it looks good, and it fairly well fit the meme or fit the concepts as they were used on the Windows Phone. So the continuity was there. Now what they've done is just kind of gone backward. And I've been pumping, as soon as this newest build came out, the consumer preview, I've been pumping their feedback channels, their feedback app, with all these things that I tell them you've got to fix. These things are unacceptable. And evidently a lot of people, for different reasons than I have expressed, are also not really happy with it. But I think it's because they wanted to go even harder over towards the Windows 7 thing, because there's so many people who just don't like Metro. Thing is, the things that are legacy, okay, we just keep doing legacy stuff. Just let me be able to use the desktop for those things. But don't take all the Metro stuff and throw it up onto the desktop. I like the beauty of the Metro way of doing things, and you can marry the two as I showed you in the video. And if you have dual screens, which like I have here, it's even better because you have a bigger palette that you can spread that across. I can have Metro apps running on this screen and all my legacy stuff going on over here. So I can play the world. I can have multiple Metro apps over here and then all of my desktop stuff running over here. So really, if you're running dual screen, it's even a better deal. And another aspect I find very frustrating, the same people who say, oh, I just don't like having to jump back and forth between Metro and desktop, and yet they're absolutely drooling over themselves over the fact that Windows 10 introduces virtual desktops, which basically it's a way for you to set up all sorts of applications on your desktop, all these windows on your desktop, and then through a key combination create additional virtual desktops. So it's like it hides this desktop and then brings forward another desktop where you can have other things on there. You can have, I mean, people have like 3 virtual desktops going. I'm like, how is that any less jarring than switching between a Metro screen of apps and your desktop? How is that any more or less jarring than switching between multiple desktops? You may not even be aware or remember that you had, well, where did this program I just started? Oh yeah, I had a second virtual, I had a virtual desktop going, and all the programs are on there. So it just frustrates me. Now I was saying I was going to show you about the touchpad. Now I've got my Windows Phone trying to tell me I've got a text, and he should know better than to text me when I'm in a show. Sorry, I'm not getting it. If you look on my Surface tablet, it's got, of course, the keyboard. Let me switch to my close-up. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. You see, it's, whoops. Whoa, what happened? The pen fell out. All right, so you see I have the touchpad here. And so, you know, typically it's used like a mouse, like a mouse. But the thing is, you can do two-finger gestures on that. Oh, where'd it go? You can do two-finger gestures on there. And then I have this Logitech keyboard. So you'll notice I have over here. But I can actually use multiple, I can do 2 fingers and actually do the same kind of pinch and zoom and scrolling functions on Windows 8. So if I've got like my photo app open on Windows 8 and I've got a picture I'm looking at and I want to zoom in on it, I can through that touchpad either on my keyboard here or certainly on my on a laptop that has, because most of your laptops now have those touchpads, even if they're not a touch screen. You can do the pinch and zoom, and that works fine. And if you do 2 fingers, you can actually swipe and scroll things. As a matter of fact, your newer laptops will treat the edges of your touchpad similar to the edges of your screen, even though you don't have a touch screen. So you can, where on a touch screen, you could take your finger and swipe from the side to bring up the charm, you know, like from the right side to bring up the charms, or swipe from the left to flip through your apps. You can do the same thing on a touchpad. That actually works. Just take 2 fingers and you swipe, and it will actually do the same thing. It's actually pretty cool. So if you've got a keyboard like this and a mouse, you almost don't ever have to type until you actually have to really type something like figures or a Word document or whatever. You don't have to do any of that. You can use a combination of the touchpad and a mouse to simulate a touch screen. Now, I have to admit, I have to be honest with you, because I have the Windows Phone and I have my Surface Pro 3, and my laptop at work is one of those convertibles. So you flip the screen around, it folds back, and so it becomes kind of a tablet. It's a hybrid. It's a touch screen as well. I'm so used to a touchscreen now, I find myself reaching up and wanting to tap things on my screen because it's so intuitive for me. And it's so funny that early on with Windows 8, people were saying, oh, they shouldn't have made this so touch-centric because people are not going to want to reach up and touch their screens. And that's absolutely turned out not to be true. People who actually have gotten used to touch screens find themselves, even on a desktop, wanting to go up and touch the screen, which is why now a number of your all-in-one computers that are really large, I mean, they've got like 27, 30-inch screens, are touchscreen. They're all in one unit, so it's like a stand-up thing. You don't have an actual separate PC component. It's all built in, and they're touchscreen because people are getting used to that. That is becoming the expectation, and that's why I think something like that HoloLens from Microsoft potentially is going to be a great thing. I think that's going to be the way things go if they can make that smoother and faster to react. And I think that's all part of the camera technology. In this case, the visuals and being able to register what your hand's doing. Because literally, what you're looking at in the HoloLens, and you can go on YouTube and go on their website, and you can see more demos and more explanation of how it works. But obviously, whatever you're seeing projected in the lens, but as if it's out in front of you, because it's really not projected out there. It's actually in the glasses, but it's thrown into a three-dimensional depth of field for you. It's got to do so, and it's also got to be able to see your hands. So you can't just like arbitrarily reach down. You got to make sure your hands are visible within the context of your what the computer is showing you with the lens. And so right now that is very kind of awkward because you're trying to grab hold of something that's not really there. And so your mind is trying to interpret 3 dimensions where there aren't really 3 dimensions in this case. But as they improve that technology, if they keep going with that, I think it really is going to nullify or further diminish keyboard use. And as Cortana, the computer assistant, the artificial intelligent assistant, becomes more mature on the PC platform, and they're also putting on the Xbox, I think that the ability to simply say things will be automatic. I constantly amaze my friends at work when I'm doing virtually touchless interface with this, because I have Cortana set on all the time. So if somebody texts me, like you heard going on, if somebody texts me, I can choose to respond, and I never have to touch it. I just simply have to say, yeah, reply, and then I tell it what I want him to say, and then it says, okay, this is what I got. She says, this is what I got. Do you want me to send it? Sure, go ahead and send it. All of that the virtual access becomes very, very convenient. I would not be surprised at some point we start to see the advances in diving that relate to that kind of thing. Because right now, for a cool $1,000, you can get a very good voice communication system for underwater. All of that, thank you. You can thank James Cameron for that, because when he was doing The Abyss, he basically sanctioned the design of that system that's used in the movie The Abyss for communicating underwater, both from the standpoint of the director and the crew, but also the cast. So while you could hear all the cast doing their lines, all the communication of direction and what to do with the lights and how to set up the shots was all communicated underwater, because they couldn't just come up out of the environment and say, okay, when we drop back down, here's what I want you to do. I have to do that kind of thing when I'm teaching a class. But they were able to do that through a communication system that he helped design. And so now that has gone commercial. And so for $1,000, and the price keeps dropping. I remember when the same setup was $2,000. You can communicate. Well, with something like HoloLens, I think it's just a matter of time before we start seeing the ability to have more things virtually shown to us and that we virtually interact with, even underwater. you already have a couple of different, Oceanic makes one. I forget who the other company is. They make a heads-up display already. That's kind of like Google Glass for underwater, that you don't have to have a dive computer, although you always should have a backup for something like that because it is a mask after all. But they have it actually built into the mask, and so it's remotely. It's, of course, battery powered and everything, but it's using the same wireless kind of technology that they use in the hoseless depth or pressure gauges in computers, where you just have a device that screws into the high pressure port of your tank, and it transmits data to your computer, so it doesn't actually have to be on a hose, and the computer's then telling you exactly how much air it has. It's actually showing, it can actually, those computers can actually tell you what your breathing rate is, how quickly you're consuming your air, and give you an estimate, not just of where your computer can tell you your estimated time left based on theoretical tissue loading, but it can also, because of that information, can actually tell you based on your current breathing and the depth, etc., you can expect to run out of air here. So now imagine seeing that now in the heads-up displays of some of these new masks that actually have that portrayed. Now let's take that to the next step, where you can actually see three-dimensionally ahead of you all of this information. So it's not just a little projected thing on a mini screen in your mask. It's actually projected out ahead of you, which can be very, very beneficial to people who have maybe sight challenges. As I get older, I have to wear these old man glasses to see up close when I'm wearing my contacts, because they correct for my nearsighted vision, because I can't see far out. But because now I'm older, that correction actually causes a problem for near close up. So I wear reading glasses. Well, so a heads-up display may not be a good thing for me. But if I have something like a HoloLens designed in a mask, I could have that projected out into the water and see it very clearly, because it's at a size, etc., that is easy to read. So there's all these potential advances that kind of technology is going to benefit, not just for the computers. So, all right, man, have we run long? It's so funny. Here I am, just little old me here, and I'm pushing 2 hours into the show. Hopefully, I've got another dog trying to get up here. I've got two behind me, and I've got the third one wanting to climb up. Hopefully you have found some of this information beneficial. It looks like, John, you did. Always available to help out when people have questions and answers, or questions and need answers. Which reminds me of something that was supposed to happen today that didn't. I was going to help somebody out, and they didn't provide what I needed in order to help them. So I'll have to give them a call about that. But I digress. So as we wind down, let me jump down to our administrivia. So our next dive club meeting is 19th of February, 7 p.m. at Rudy's Restaurant. Always great food there. I really love eating there. Our dive classes, again, for 2015 are April 23rd through the 26th, May 28th through the 31st, June 25th through the 28th, June 23rd through the 26th, August 27th through the 30th, and September 24th through the 28th. Now, those are basic classes, but I can do advanced classes if I get, at least a couple of people, because I would rather two basic divers work together through some of the skills that you're going to learn, rather than me, and that way I can supervise what they're doing together. But I will, if in some cases, I will do a solo class, but I really prefer to at least have two people in those. And those I'll do on-demand kind of thing. For each of the classes you see here, and really for any of the classes I teach, you can sign up as early as you want, but you can't sign up any later than the first week of the month of that class. So, for instance, the first week of April would be the latest that you could sign up for the April 23rd to 26th class, because unless you're going to do the online portion, which is a separate deal, you pay separately for that, that gives me enough time to order your student materials and get those to you, so you have enough time to actually do the self-study and complete the requirements within the book. before we get together to go over that material and then bring you through the practicals. So that's the class layout for this year. Also, my wife, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, my wife is going to have her directorial debut directing the show Souvenirs, which opens, Upstagers present this, February 6th, 7th, 13th, and 14th. Now, I'm going to try to catch one of the Friday night shows, which would be either the 6th or the 13th. That way it doesn't negatively impact doing the podcast. However, if it turns out that something happens and I can't make do one of the Friday shows, I will obviously have to do a Saturday show, and that means that I will have to, we'll be preempting that week's episode. So just watch the Facebook page because I'll announce it there and via Twitter if it looks like we're going to be skipping that week. So, but if you happen to be in the Del Rio area, I really highly encourage you to check out the show. It's based on a true story, both funny and kind of tragic in a way. But it's based on a true story, real person's life, and two-person show. It's kind of interesting. It's got a lot of music, but it's not a musical. Now, if that intrigues you, then all the more reason to go see the show. So, and doors open at 7 o'clock. So, or no, 7:30. So, definitely want you to come out and check that show out. February 6th, 7th, 13th, and 14th. And then also, if you are diving this time of the year, which I know almost nobody is, you can get your tanks filled out at the Broke Mill RV Park. Just give Mike McCarson a call at 830-719-2935 so he knows you're coming in. Make sure the system's charged up. I can fill your tank. If you can't get a hold of him and you're really desperate to do a dive, I can fill your tank because I do have my own system for teaching classes and then for my own our own personal diving needs. Also, we always plug, they're always looking for volunteers at A Pet's Wish. We'd like to get some more regular people that can go out on a regular basis. My wife and I volunteer every Monday night without fail. And the more volunteers they can get doing things on a regular basis, the easier and a shorter amount of time those volunteers have to be out there. I'll be honest with you, a lot of times since Monday is after a weekend, weekends are often very hectic if they can get anybody at all. And so we usually come into quite a mess. And so we come in at 6 and we usually don't get out before 10. And it's not just a few times. We've been there well to midnight. So, it's kind of tough to do pull a full day of work and then be there. It's a tough gig to be there for another 6 or 8 hours to do a show. Oh, and my wife corrected me. It's not Souvenirs plural. It's Souvenir singular. So, my bad. Now, if you want to keep in contact with us, just check out our website, delriodiveclub.com, or catch us on Facebook. Just look for Del Rio Dive Club, or you can send a message via Skype. Just look for TGWD. And of course, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, just look for Robert CFP or send me an email. I will respond. I don't have somebody doing this for me. I actually respond to each and every email. Just send it to robert.wade@cetifox.net. Again, hope that you got something out of the show this week. And one last plug, we are still looking for a regular co-host to join the show. So if you're in the Del Rio area and you'd like to try it out, just let me know. We'll get you set up, do a little test run so you can see if you're comfortable with that. Think you'll have fun. So in the meantime, if all goes well, we will have a show for next week, unless I end up having to change the night that I go see my wife's play. We'll do the show next week. Hope you have an awesome week this week, and enjoy yourselves, and we will see you hopefully next week on another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive. See ya.